Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Seed World Canada Innovation Series webinar. My name is Mark Zinkowitz, and I serve as editor for Seed World Canada. And today I'm happy to be your host. Today's theme is ENDOGUARD BIOSTIM SI Stronger Roots, More Natural Defenses, Faster Plant Development, and Higher Yields. We'll hear from two experts who will talk about the intricacies surrounding the seed treatment technology, why now is such a crucial time to learn more about it, and how you can harness it to improve crop production efficiency and yield in a sustainable system. Now, before we begin, I'd just like to thank our sponsor, Adjuvants Plus, for their support. During the presentations, you'll likely have some questions. You can type these into the chat box at any time during the webinar, and we'll address them during the Q&A session that we'll hold at the very end. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available following the event. Now, the topic of biologicals is something I've been long fascinated by, and it's something you might have read about in Seed World and seen me talk about on webinars in the past. Sustainable agricultural practices are becoming more prevalent in North America, and for good reason. We need to feed a growing population in a sustainable manner. Along with this comes the need for new technologies that allow our industry to thrive while caring for the environment at the same time. We have two speakers today. Bill Brown is president of Adjuvants Plus, and Ron Taylor handles global sales and marketing for Adjuvants Plus. This is a Canadian-based agribusiness that develops innovative solutions to improve field and horticultural crop yields. Bill and Ron, welcome. Now, you recently announced the Canadian registration of a unique biological inoculant that strengthens root development for all crops. ENDOGUARD BIOSTIM SI is powered by a highly active strain of Clonostasis rosea. Now, this technology improves the soil health around the roots, increases root hair production, improves germination and emergence, and remains active on the roots for the life of the crop. Now, you're going to tell us about this technology, how it works, what makes it unique, and why people should consider it, be they retailers, growers, people involved in research, and more. Ron, you're going to kick us off, so I'll hand the floor over to you. Take it away.
Okay, well, let me take it from there and start into it here. As you can see, everyone, well, first of all, thanks for joining us here. I really appreciate you taking your time to spend some time with us over the next hour, and hope you find it interesting, some of the new information coming forward from Adjuvants Plus. Let me just tag on here to the next slide here and get things rolling for everyone. As Bill was mentioning, Dr. Bill Brown, he's the president of Adjuvants Plus, and I help out with the team on the global sales and the marketing. But Bill has been quite active with the company. He's the owner and started the business up. And the business of Adjuvants Plus, just a little bit of a brief overview, has been really focused on trying to bring forward products to help other products perform better, to increase crop production. So things like some of the premium products like Stick and Stay to help with the better sticking of the product, different products onto the leaf surface, helps to reduce evaporation and even drift. There's also some drift retardant products that the company has, and even some water conditioner products, and a suite of different micronutrient products as well. But all of those are not what we're here to talk about today, although we love to. But our real focus is on some of the development that's happened over the past several years on the biological arena, and in particular to one of the strains of fungi called Clonostasis rosea. And Bill will be talking more about that. And everyone, there's no spelling test at the end of this presentation about how to spell that, so don't worry, pressure's off on that. But I hope you find it very interesting. One of the things that I find interesting on the development of this product, it actually comes from Agriculture Canada, identified it and brought it forward and got the technology patented. And then through a license agreement with Adjuvants Plus, we've been working on it for several years on learning more about it from the field experiments, and more information from greenhouse as well. So Bill has got a deep knowledge on this product. And then we've been bringing it forward for commercialization. This past year, CFIA approved the product, so we have full registration for the product, ENDOGUARD BIOSTIM SI, and a couple others in the same arena of biologicals. And so we're quite excited about where we're at right now. We're bringing it forward commercially. And so I think, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you now, okay?
Well, very good, and welcome everyone. What we have here is a very, very interesting organism. We have taken years to develop it. The time is right now. This is perfect timing. Everybody's trying to really reinvigorate the soil. The soils have been eroded over time. You'll find this organism in the fence row, but not in the field anymore. So we're trying to put it back in. Okay, it's now good farming practices like good rotation, cover crops, maintaining residue, the use of gentle fertilizers, the sulfate forms, for example. Who has a chance to have enough manure? And that's a real complication. We just don't get much, opportunity to return a lot of organic matter to the soil anymore. Minimum till is trying, but the fact is you need to make things change. This product can be put in furrow or foliar, but what it does is really pick up micronutrients from the soil, and that's absolutely critical. That's what it does absolutely the best and the most consistent. Okay, and it really changes the microbiome, the area around the roots. So next slide. Our problems exist right now because there are no cover crops that really are being used extensively, or our season's too short to grow them. Use of harsh or high rate chemicals mess up the microflora. Many people already know this. We don't have an opportunity for manure. There's not a lot of surface residue. It's all gone except if you're able to grow corn where you have a lot of residue. Most other crops hardly offer any. And we're starting to harvest some of the straw off, and use it for other purposes. So there's not a lot of good organic matter going back. Herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides often kill the good and the bad microbes in the soil. So you end up with an unbalanced microbiome that favors pathogens. And when you have that buildup and you don't have the good rotation, there's what's called the poised soil. That's the soil that has all these organisms, not necessarily good ones, ready to feed on the crop. And that's why we try to rotate, but it's pretty well impossible now. Anyway, next slide. Shift. We need to shift. The problem is a shift in fertilizer or pesticide changes the microflora above and below ground. When you use a lot of high nitrogen, nitrogen is very, much detrimental. Ammonia, particularly, just wipes out the microflora in the soil. And so it's very important to address the actual level of microbes in the soil and try to encourage them. Next slide. Addressing the altered rhizosphere. There's hidden knowledge. The microflora, and the crops are being stressed in several, ways. The weather is most determining factor. Fertilizer, yes, very significant changes. We tend to over-fertilize in a row, in a furrow. Tillage is quite damaging to the microflora. And dryness, of course, back with the weather, and too much moisture, too little moisture have the same effect. You can drown microbes. But what we're really seeing also is that pesticides, some of them, really do alter the micronutrients available to the plant and in the plant. That's a very different thing that most people don't understand. Addressing the altered rhizosphere. That's that area around the roots that the root hairs actually feed the plant by. The main scaffold roots are not what's important. It's the root hairs that are the acquisition, organism that picks up nutrients. So whether the fertilizer, the tillage, and the pesticides can mess this all up. Growth stalls with particularly too many of these pesticides or bad weather event, too much rain, you can basically destroy the microflora or really reduce it. So with the pesticides, we know that sunlight is wasted during the replacement period. We know that. The plant is set back. Many growers also understand that the plants are set back. You see the yellowing, particularly soybeans and other crops, or that there's a differential maturity. You can have chatter loss, you can have perfect crop, and you can have greens. This is like canola in the same field at the same time. Next. Addressing the altered rhizosphere, the hidden knowledge, this is where I'm going to get into microflora and crops are being stressed by several factors. The plant energy is wasted when these micronutrients are tied up. And the most important ones, manganese, zinc, and iron, are simply not available to the plant. And this is really bad under high nitrogen, or I should say nitrogen, under when you simply have too much going on. Let's go back to the injured plant. Releases sugars and proteins. The herbicides are causing a problem. Most people don't know there's two modes of action. Glyphosate, they're a chelating agent and they're a herbicide. Herbicide, absolutely critically important. But if you don't address the nutrient scavenging, as I call it, then you're going to have delayed growth. And in Western Canada, this is critical. Let's go on to the next slide. Next one.
It's actually already there, Bill, I think.
It's moved it.
No.
Hold on. Oh, let's see. How's that?
Okay. So write down that whole key about the microflora being shifted by herbicides, pesticides. Fungicides can do the same thing. But we're really focusing at this time on what Endofine SI can do, and it exudes these large proteins that are very negative, and the soil is acidified, even in high pH soils, where the manganese, zinc, and iron are really not available. This exudes out of the organism, kind of exudes these peptides out of the root system, and they acquire the micronutrients. But the real key here is they put them in the reduced state. Pesticide influence on the root zones puts things in the oxidized state. Micronutrients are not available. We're making the available nutrients available, and very quickly they're taken up and moved within the plant. So it's not just in the roots, it's in the roots and into the plant. And that's the key. This organism is just full of really interesting ion binding structures that help in the acquisition and movement. So we're into regenerative agriculture, encouraging life in the soil. Microbe food is what we can kind of call this. Seed inoculants like rhizobia, people are familiar with those with nodules on peas and lentils and soybeans. We're also complementary with some bacillus species, and this organism is in the Clonostachys species, a new type of fungi. It's a true endophyte, lives inside the plant for the life of the plant, not as a few minutes or a few days. It's there for the life of the root system. You can change seed by installing these microbes, and then you can end up with endophyte enhanced seed, which is one of the things that we will be going to in the future. Next slide. If you end up with a healthier soil, the plants are able to take care of themselves. If you have the micronutrient acquisition abilities of that this organism gives the plant, It is much bigger. It can literally stand stress, and it's a much. Let's face it, it's more fit for the environment in which it's growing. You knock the seed. You can also put this in furrow as well as on the seed, or you can band spray it. I mean, but that will be in the future. But the whole key here for seed inoculation is you want to shift the microflora by being the first to colonize. See, this is a me first, me win kind of organism. So if it's on the seed, it can be on the seed months and months in advance, maybe years in advance, because it's a true endophyte. So you can treat in the fall for planting in the spring, and you can put hard chemistry on it. Improve stress tolerance, more root hairs, absolutely critical. Additive effects are very, very important. Let's go on. Next slide.
Well, Bill, I think that was your last slide. And one of the things I think I always like to hear that you talk about is the start clean and stay clean. You want to say any more about that piece?
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I was moving a little quickly there. Yeah,
I can't believe it. You're moving quickly through presentations. I can't believe it.
Yeah. So they've tried to encourage me not to talk so much. But everybody knows I have a vast knowledge of how this product works. But starting clean and staying clean, that means that you install the endophyte by putting it on the seed. And you can do it ahead of time on the seed. That's called upstream inoculation. You can do it in the fall. But what you do is allow it to go in. It will establish equilibrium in the seed. It'll come. And then when you can actually put hard chemistry on it when you plant it. So once it's inside, it's happy. It has an amazing array of enzyme systems that can negate the effects of, it can actually control its environment. That's the whole thing. And there's a true symbiotic relationship between rhizobia. The nodules on peas and soybeans are completely covered with this organism. It increased nitrogen uptake. It increases manganese, zinc, and iron uptake, and it does so in all environments and with all crops we've tested. This is not a 1 or 2 crop organism. This works on everything. That's really good. And it shifts the microflora to a state where the plant is able to grow better, healthier, and stronger. And so, your turn.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. You did a great job. And then, folks, one of the things about this technology and Bill's experience is, there's a wealth of experience because, like I said, he's been working with this technology for several years now. We've really got a good view of what's the mode of action like, how to work with this product, what it can do, what it can't do. A lot of biologicals that come to market, in my mind, that I've seen over the past 7 years that I've worked with, a lot of times you cannot talk about these products. They can't talk about the mode of action. But this one here, I'm really impressed with what the company has done about getting to know the product and helping to bring it forward the right way and being able to make the proper claims around what it can do. So thanks, Bill. We are going to make sure we have time for more technical questions throughout the program here at the very end, because I'm sure there's tons of questions as you start to learn more about the ENDOGUARD BioStim Si. But we're just trying to give a flavor of what the product is today. And certainly if the questions aren't answered by the end of the program, by all means, please send more questions for information on our website at the very end. We'll tie off of that at the very end here. Bill, thanks again for your presentation. What I want to do now is transition into going to market and how can this product be used in crops or around the world. Actually, we're focused here on Canada, North America. I wanted to start off, and Bill mentioned this already, about it's not a 1 or 2 crop use pattern. This product can be used safely on a broad array of crop types. As you can see here, field crops, specialty crops. We're talking to the folks in greenhouses as well. And again, this is very much a product that's going to deliver similar benefits no matter what the type of crop is, and also it doesn't matter the type of geography or even soil type. You can go deeper on that later on. Now, today, it's kind of like, where do you start to talk about stuff? Today, we got a couple different things we could be going down a path. I do want to say that we're focused on our seed inoculant product here. The ENDOGUARD BIOSTIM Si stands for seed inoculant. We've also got a registration for a folio application of the same technology, but we're not going to be talking about that here today. We're going to save that for another webinar. So stay tuned, folks, and come back in when we have the foliar. Okay. And our focus today is going to be talking about field crops, and in particular, some of our trials and results and what we're seeing on different field crops, mainly across Canada, but we've also had trials going on in the United States as well. So that's where we're at today, focusing in on the seed inoculant on field crops. How do you use the product? How is it packaged? Just a little bit around that. We can go into more detail later on or after the session here. Bill did mention already that it's a couple different ways that you could actually apply the ENDOGUARD BIOSTIM SI, the seed inoculant. Could actually be applied to the seed several months ahead of the actual planting, the seeding time. So if it's more convenient for you and your operation, you can actually have it already on even before the treatment goes on, which is ideal because the colonization starts and you have a really good colonization already built up. But what we're finding is it's very easy and very applicable for most operations is to do it right at the time of seeding. Again, it's a nice way of doing it. Right when the seed are out, the planter's out, you could put it right into the hopper at the top where the seed is going. Make sure you mix it around a little bit, and then allow it to sit for just a little while to let the colonization start, and then it goes out. But what we're finding, you'll see that little slide to the right hand side, is one of the best ways of getting the product applied and really get good consistency across the seed is when you're putting it in the hopper part that goes up the auger. So this little cup here, 25-gram cup, and all you do is you sprinkle that on, and then as the seed churns to go down in and feeds into the auger, it gives a good mixing and a good spread, so you have good consistency across your seed at the time of planting. On the left, you saw a jug here. That's the way we're currently selling it to the marketplace. It's 300 grams.
Yeah.
Not very.
They don't have an official label. That's just a demo label from last year.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to put some more marketing on that, Make it more flashy, right? Come on. So, but yeah, that's right, Bill. Thanks for pointing that out. That's 300 grams, and it goes a long ways because there's a lot of colony forming units inside. So it's a heavy load, so it's a lot of active, if you will. And that 300 gram of container, it's hard to say how far that's going to go because it depends on your seed size. And really, your rate of product is 25 grams per kilogram of seed. So again, as we all know, there's different sizes of seed, depends on the crop. But again, that can go a long ways for that kind of a treatment. That little cup, when you're going back to that little cup that you're sprinkling that on, let's say, for example, that's wheat that you're planting, that would be around 20 acres or so. That would spread for 20 acres. Soybeans, like we're looking at here, it's a bigger seed, so you're looking at about 8 to 10 acres for that little cup. But it helps with the measuring and putting it out in the application. I'm going to switch now over to kind of share out a little bit of some of the experiences that we've had on several different crops to kind of give you a flavor of the performance of the product. And again, there's a lot more depth that we could be going into a number of different cropping situations, but this is just to kind of give you a view of where we're going. On cereals, and this is a good oat demo. It's a large-scale field trials side by side. 80 acres that you can see that was treated with the ENDOGUARD BIOSTIM SI out of a 640-acre field. This is on oats, okay? And one of the things that's not just about the yield. Obviously, that's what we're all aiming for, is to improve the yield and improve your profitability. But these are some of the observations that when we talked with the grower, asked the grower, and it was a lot of help actually, to go out and do some digging, the plant digging of the roots after harvest, and to take a look at what was going on below the ground after treating with ENDOGUARD BIOSTIM SI. And you'll see in the picture down below, okay, first of all, there's a little bit more length of roots to the treated side versus the untreated. But some of the comments that we found very interesting from the grower, as you can already see and read, it was harder to rinse off the roots that were treated, hard to get the dirt away from the roots and without breaking the fibers apart. Another comment was more difficult to separate the individual plant roots. And really what he was saying is the roots are all intertwined, and that was because it's more dense, more hair. The root hairs are more dense, more developed, and that's a good thing. I will also say that there was another side comment, I believe, that he said, you know what, I had to slow down a gear in order to work up do the tillage. And so I'm not sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but he meant that as a good thing. It took him more time, but certainly what it proves is that there was the root structure was a lot more robust on the ENDOGUARD treated side. And we all know a more robust root system is going to help you uptake more nutrients, uptake more water when dry conditions, and certainly give the crop a better defense, natural defense against other stresses. So that's on oats, and I will say that you should see the same thing on any other cereal crop, and certainly the performance is there for yield as well. We asked the grower to take yield monitor from the yield monitor on the combine and took it several locations across the 80 acres versus the untreated in the same area. And you can see this is just an example of a couple of spots along the way. In each case, he saw yield enhancement, a significant yield enhancement, I would say, with the treated ENDOGUARD treated areas. When it was all averaged out, saw a little over 10 bushels, or 10% increase in yield versus the non-treated. Significant. When you put that into dollars and cents, you know, he was looking at almost $8,800 improvement over the non-treated area. So begs the question, why didn't he spray? Why didn't he use the product on more acres, right? And I think this year, this is one of the things he's going to be doing more as he's talking to us about this.
Look how much money you cost me.
Yeah. So I think he was okay with slowing down on the tillage when he was seeing this kind of a profit coming back after the harvest there too. So it wasn't just on oats, and we're seeing similar kind of results on other crops. And I'm going to switch over to some of the pulse crops here, field peas in particular here. On the left-hand side, you'll see treated with the ENDOGUARD BIOSTIM SI. And visually, you can see versus the untreated, more robust plants that were treated, fuller plants, taller plants, darker green. Bottom line, healthier crop. And healthier crop usually means you're going to have a better yield and better performance at the end of the day. And right from the very beginning, though, and we'll see this on other crops as well, you'll see an improvement on your emergence. Better emergence out of the ground, get the seed out of the ground, because right when Bill was talking about start clean, stay clean, it's helping to give those defenses right off the bat. So natural defenses to ward off other pathogens. Get the first in, like Bill was saying, to be able to block out other pathogens. And we're seeing it in emergence. So 23% better emergence right out of the gates versus untreated. You're already got a gain that you should be able to see an improvement all the way through the season, given the right weather conditions to help along the way, of course. And so more robust, getting out of the ground, and then taking that through for greater vigor as well. Looking at the roots again at the very early stage, even at a seedling stage, you can see a difference. On this case here, the ENDOGUARD treated side is on the right-hand side. Take a look at those roots. Compare that to what's untreated. Do you see a difference? I think it's very clear on this that, again, we got a lot more fibrous root development here. The small hair roots are really well developed, more robust, and all of that means is more surface contact with the roots to the soil to be able to bring in those nutrients out of the soil, to bring in the moisture, and especially in those dry areas or drought seasons, that kind of a crop that's got a root system developing right at the beginning like that, they're going to get through a longer period of drought than the ones on the left-hand side. And also to be able to defend against certain diseases just from the natural strength of the plant itself. Bill mentioned this, I believe. Yeah, he mentioned this around, and when we're talking about the legume crops, there's also a difference in the inodulation. Random samples of going out and picking some of the plants out of the untreated side versus the area treated with the ENDOGUARD, you see a significant bump in the number of nodules. And we'll talk a bit more about the health about the nodules when we get into soybeans, but it doesn't matter. All the legume crops, we're seeing not only improvement in the number of nodules when treated, and also the health of the nodules. Quite a difference. 5 times more nodulation increase with the use of the ENDOGUARD BioStim Si. Switching, still in the legume crops, but switching over into soybeans, we've had several fields of soybeans put out with side-by-side. And again, this is not small plot. This is putting it into large-scale field side-by-sides. The fields are consistent. We always look for making sure the fields are consistent in soil type and topography so that you don't have any variations that way. But, you know, here's 3 of the sites where you're seeing a good bump in yield, especially with the soybean prices the way they've been. That's a good bump in yield, and on average around 5 bushels the acre advantage when it's been treated with the ENDOGUARD. To further the discussion around what's happening below the surface and what's happening on the roots, you know, Bill talked about the clonostasis. That's the active ingredient of the ENDOGUARD BioStim Si. The clonostasis actually covers and protects the nodules. See all that white covering up the nodules? That's protecting it as well, and giving you good root health as it's going forward and developing out the nodules. And I believe the next slide is actually showing some of the nodulation be on the right-hand side with the ENDOGUARD treated side versus untreated. You see a few things going on there. More nodules, for one thing, the more healthy nodules if you were to cut those open, and more of the root hairs. So it's more of a robust kind of a plant. And I believe, and from what I've seen too, is you also start to see that translates up into the health of the plant, giving you a stronger stalk as well. So that's going to help with reducing the amount of lodging later on towards harvest. And also, again, all the way through, it's helping with those natural defenses against other pathogens. Still on the subject of beans, but we're switching over to white beans in the category of pulse crops. We really see a significant advantage when we're using this product on things like white beans, and other pulses that are tough to get going, you know, and up against a lot of challenges, a lot of stresses, and just not a strong crop on its own, as you know, if you're growing those crops. Well, on white beans, some of our side-by-side trials, and I should say that on the photo, on the left-hand side, you'll see a flag and some rocks at the beginning here. My buddy who put this out, I hope he took the flag and the stones out of the field before they went into the harvest, but I never got the rest of the story on that one. But the point is, you see darker green a crop that's been treated. If you look closer and got in closer with that, you actually see the plant development is a little bit ahead of the non-treated and areas too. Bottom line, on some of these side-by-sides, we're seeing significant bumps in yields, 7 bushels the acre advantage on here. One thing we have not done yet, and we're going to be looking closer at some of these crops going into this next season, is are we seeing an advantage or any improvement on quality of crop as well as on quantity of crop? And I don't have the answer for that as of yet. We suspect that there could be an enhancement on quality as well, but we want to prove that out in our trials going forward and take it to some of the different levels for quality as well. I'm going to spend a couple more slides on white beans, because this is a couple time shots of the same field. On the left-hand side was the treated with the ENDOGUARD, and on the right-hand side is untreated. And even at the very early stage of coming out of emergence, you see more plants emerging out, maybe a little bit sooner as well as the untreated. And so survival is going to be better on the left-hand side that's been treated with ENDOGUARD. And then as you get a couple weeks down the road, there you go. You start to see the plant development taking off more so on the ENDOGUARD side as well. And that crop will start to close in faster than the untreated side as well. So it even helps as you go forward on that one. Corn is one that, even when we were putting out our field trials last year, we had a lot of people who were looking at this and putting it out on, say, soybeans or white beans, and in the same areas they're growing corn. They said, well, what about corn? And quite honestly, we haven't done a lot of trials on corn yet, but on what we are seeing, we're also seeing an advantage on using it on corn as well. Well, one of the sites on the left-hand side here, one of them in southwest Ontario, nice loamy soil, usually high production of corn. So usually not a lot of stresses that you see on the surface anyway. But even with this one here, you see a 4 bushel to the acre advantage of using the ENDOGUARD BioStim SI. And I think that grower was quite pleased, quite interested in continuing on with an additional ENDOGUARD this coming season. And the other one here, we had actually up in Edmonton, some corn trial, side-by-side field trial up in Edmonton. And that's actually shows some of the corn that was actually harvested as well there. And again, I wasn't to that location personally, but what I understand was there was more stress conditions going on in that field. And whenever you see more stress, more of an opportunity for ENDOGUARD BioStim SI to really demonstrate what it can do to help overcome some of these stresses that the crops are up against. 19 bushels an acre difference, treated versus untreated. I wouldn't count on that every time, folks, but that was really something, especially if you're under a stress condition. But you start looking closer at those cobs of corn that were on the treated side, you start to see more length in the cob. You also see more girth. And actually, as we started working on some of those samples, you had better tip fill overall as well. And tip fill is a real indicator of a healthier plant, allowing the moisture and the nutrients to really feed the corn and be able to fill out the kernels on the ear that was developed. And more kernels per cob means more yield per acre, all bottom line. And so that's what we're seeing that really drove that yield in Alberta. The other thing that we found very interesting, working with a researcher that was out there on that one, and you'll see that on the 4th bullet point on the corn slide here. They actually went out after harvest and did soil samples and measured the level of Clonostachys rosea. And in the areas that were treated in the spring, in the spring at the time of planting, in the areas that were treated and harvested, and we had it identified through GPS, those were actually 10 times higher levels after harvest that identified the Clonostachys rosea. Now, remember Bill talking about it, that the strain that we're talking about here that's in the active of ENDOGUARD, that's not only for the first couple of days of when you use it or the first couple of weeks, it's straight through the full life of the crop, all the way through the harvest. And as you can see, it definitely supports the story of regenerative agriculture. This is a key component of us being able to allow regenerative agriculture to play itself out by using ENDOGUARD BioStim SI when you're planting. So I hope that sounds interesting, some of the results, and I'm hoping that you see a lot of different benefits from this product and encouraged to learn more about it. But we highlight some of these points here about some of the benefits. Right off the bat, we thought, Bill, to your claim to fame, or one of the points that you talk about, start clean, stay clean. Really, what we're talking about: get the Clonostachys on, get the ENDOGUARD on, and you're blocking out other pathogens trying to enter in. So get our product on first, and you're blocking out other pathogens. You're enhancing the overall nodulation, and then we talked about that a few different slides. There's a number of different things, and you'll see it on pulse crops and on the legume crops. That the nodules really show up as being quite different when they're treated and quite vibrant. The improvement on the emergence and the vigor, getting that seed out of the ground fast as possible, and then to have that energy to put the energy into growth of the plant. That's what you want, to have your best opportunity to get to your highest yields. And with the better root system, we've talked about it a number of different times, but it's going to be able to take up more of the micronutrients, in particular, feeding the plants, so what they're starving on. And then especially in the dry conditions, it's going to allow, with a better root system, to be able to take more moisture out of the soil that's needed to keep it growing. you know, some people say that Bill was talking too much. Maybe I've been talking too much. But anyway, folks, this is my last slide here, and then we'll carry on to some questions so we have enough time for everyone here. But one of the things we haven't talked a lot, just a little bit around the applications, it's easy to use. And those people that were working with it this past year, I think that was one of the comments that they came back and said, okay, we know it's safe to on the crop. We know it's safe with the user applying, and it's easy to actually measure out and apply at the time of planting. So it's easy to use. Overall, it helps to reduce the stresses on the crop, and that was a number of different areas. But again, I can't stress enough that this really supports the regenerative agriculture, and it's a good building block for your regenerative agriculture plans, as it improves the microbial life in the soil, and that really is a big benefit, and it has a longer term effect as well. And I'll end on the point about it's going to help better uptake of the micronutrients. And again, that was brought forward a few times around the plants are, for one reason or another, crops are not getting some of their micros from different barriers. This can help with that. And again, as we go forward into future webinar presentations, you'll learn more around how the foliar application can also complement that. But today we're just focused on the soil application, the seed inoculant. Mark, as you know, I can get long-winded, and that's probably I actually am watching the clock, by the way. But we wanted to make sure we had enough time for questions. I hope there's some interest in here, but I will say that if we can't answer all the questions, if assuming that there are a lot, please come to our website and check it out a bit more. Send us a message. Ask us what you're interested in, and if it's other crops we haven't covered today, bring them forward. Let's talk about that, and we'll share what we've had as experience on that. And by all means, if you want to place an order and try it out on your farm, I hope you do. That's when you learn the most about it. Give us a shout and let us know. We'll get you set up that way, okay? Mark, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Otherwise, I'll just keep on talking.
No, that was great. Thank you, gentlemen. That was wonderful. And we do have some questions. If you have a question, type it into the chat box at any time. I'm going to be selfish, actually, and start off with one of my own questions before I get to the audience questions. And this works on all crops. It's not, sometimes there are things that are targeted at one crop, that this is for corn, this is for soybean, this is for that. This works across the board, and that's fascinating to me. And can you talk a little bit about different crops and how this might, because every plant is different, right? And so does this work maybe differently in one crop and has maybe a little bit different mechanism in another crop? Can you help me sort of wrap my head around that? Because that's really a fascinating feature of this.
Do you want to handle Ron, or you want me?
Go ahead. You've got the most experience. So the technical questions, go for it, Bill.
Yeah, the neat thing is it does work on every crop we've tested it on. I mean, every type of lent, from lentils to peas to sunflowers to you name it. We've tested it. It works. And the neat thing is it's just a simple reason it works. It improves the ability of the plant to source micronutrients and nitrogen from the soil. That's pretty basic. And that's very, very critically important to the health of a plant. So whether, these products used to be looked at as biopesticides, but after a lot of studying, this product performs in sterile soil conditions, on quartz sand, on hydroponics. It works. And so it's obviously not just a biopesticide. No, it's a biostimulant, and that's the main mode of action here. And we've studied it, and we've had it out to University of Missouri, where we really tracked it down, and it came up with the fact that it shifts the microflora and puts the micronutrients in the reduced state for really rapid uptake. And once it gets inside, it's moved, the nutrients are moved within the plant rapidly and overcomes the shock of pesticides that really set a crop back. Weed control is incredibly important. Disease control is important for fungicides. You've got a product that once you get it inside, it can handle even hard chemistry on top. It can be used in rotation. We have patents on that. by the way, in the use of integrated pest management. We have a Canadian patent, a U.S. patent, an Australian patent, Brazilian patent. You know, we have on the use of integrated pest management.
Yeah, that's really powerful when the products when its mechanism of action, like you say, is so fundamental, and that's why I think it helps every
And
crop, is because it's really getting to that, no pun intended, but it's really getting to the root, and it has that very basic mechanism that all plants have in common, I would think.
yeah, and it's not obvious. Most research never picked out the fact that its main mode of action is in fact nutrient acquisition. It's right there, and we've done an actual genetic breakdown on how this plant, the actual organism rather, and it's 50% of its genome is responsible for ion binding. Like, oh my goodness, you think that might be important? That's why it picks up the micronutrients and moves them within the plant. So it's amazing.
It is. No, well, and I have a question along that vein. Could you please help me understand why this product improves the health of plants? Is it the nutrients, or are they the nutrients to microflora or to the plants? I think what this person is asking is this product feeding the microbiome? Is it feeding the plants? Because that's two different things, right? Feeding the organisms in the soil and feeding the plant itself, right?
It shifts the microflora around the roots, okay, and places the micronutrients in a form, the reduced form, for very rapid uptake. So it acidifies the root zone, which reason it works so well in high pH soils of the Midwest U.S. or Canada. It works incredibly well, but it also works on lower pH soils. So the fact is, it helps in the recovery from what nobody ever expected. I mean, everybody knows about soybeans turning yellow when you put glyphosate on. This stops that. Well, because that's manganese and zinc deficiency. It's an induced deficiency caused by the herbicide. This organism supplies the micronutrients, it resupplies it. Those elements inside the plant are cofactors in the enzymatic processes of photosynthesis and the reproductive system and the immune system. That may be important for yield and disease control, and that's got to do with micronutrients of all things. It's a very basic principle.
I have a question regarding G by E. Does the product help resolve G by E, that means genotype by environment issues, for field crops? Can you comment on that at all?
I didn't quite get that.
Does the product help resolve genotype by environment issues for field crops? So can it help to overcome some of that potential?
What you have is an endophyte enhanced plant. Okay? Even though maybe just in the root system, it's changing because it's sort of upregulating genetics within a plant. So you end up with an enhanced plant, better fit for the environment in which it's placed. And that's where we go to the poised soil condition. It's simply healthier than it should be in the soil, because micronutrients are the key to the health of plants.
Question regarding cost per acre. What is the cost per acre of using this technology? Can you offer us any insights with regards to that? Because economics obviously are very important to people, to growers, and so in terms of cost per acre, do you have any data on that at all?
I'll take that one there, Bill. It's so first of all, it depends. It depends on the crop that we're talking about, and and why that depends on the crop we're talking about. It goes back to the comment about the seed size. On certain kinds of seed, you'll have to have a higher rate because it goes back to the 25 grams per kilogram of seed. So roughly speaking, though, like you're going to be, no matter what crop you're looking at, you're going to be probably under $10 an acre for your application. And really what it looks like, what are you looking at for your ROI? So going back to take that same crop and what kind of yield advantages can you expect from this product. And so you're looking anywhere, safely saying somewhere in the range of 3 to 8% yield or return on investment. But in a lot of cases, we're seeing much higher than that. And, especially if you're into an area that you're dealing with different stresses, and this is helping to overcome some of those stresses. But we try to be realistic on our numbers when we talk about ROI. So in that range of 3 to 8%, some crops even higher level, and some areas of stress can be higher too. Hope that helps to answer some of the questions, but certainly we can help with more certainty around the pricing. If you have any specific requests, just bounce a message over onto our website, and we'll help you out that way too.
Yeah. It has to do with the amount of seed planted per acre. Like traditionally bin-run seed, or whether it be peas and stuff, there's fairly high seeding rates. And what if you've got all your seed coming up, we've got one trial that shows that even though you only planted 85%, you got the equivalent to the untreated. But if you had 100% of what you predicted, you got more yield. So it helps compensate for an area that's not quite got enough seed on it. But it's certainly, then the seed you do plant, most of it comes up. There's the key.
Question regarding.
I'd like to go back to that one question, if you don't mind. The one question the grower had, if I understood the question about the genotype by the environment, if I understood that question, some genetics, for no matter what crop we're talking about, some genetics are race horses in certain environments, soil, weather type, and others are just their workhorses, okay, and they can kind of go across a broader range. But sometimes on the racehorse type of genetics, they're more prone to different stresses and maybe not suited for certain environments. I certainly wouldn't want to say that our product would put an umbrella over everything, and to be able to say that it's always going to be able to get rid of all your stresses, to let that racehorse just go. It's going to help, given what the stresses are that we're talking about there. But some genetics, if the seed companies are saying they should not be planted in those kinds of environments, they probably know the genetics better than what we do, and I would go by their guidance on that. We can help, but I wouldn't want to oversell it for that.
No, there's as we know in plant breeding and agriculture in general, there is no magic bullet. We only have tools in the toolbox, and this is obviously just one of many tools, right? So I have a question about the following crop season. Does it remain in the soil and continue to be beneficial for the plants in the following crop season?
Yes, and there's actually some work done on putting it on the residue. If it's on the leaves of wheat, for example, it's going to go down and colonize, and it's going to make for much better decomposition of the residue. Okay, it's going to help degrade the residue, and actually it'll reproduce on the residue itself in the soil. So you put it on, wheat residue will have some there. So over time, we're going to increase the amount on the soil, but it always keeps getting knocked down because of weather conditions, too much rain, too much, the drought. All these things affect the survival in the soil. So I'd like to say you can apply it once and that be it, but I think we simply have to do it. It's much more long living. The load on the seed, for example, is not as critical as the colonization of one inside the seed. Once it enters inside the seed, it will grow and reach equilibrium. So there's a tremendous range of how much you put on. The earlier you put it on a seed, the better chances of reaching equilibrium. We have trials where it was put on soybeans a week ahead and then put on it the same day, and the week ahead is better. Okay, and that's the whole thing. It gets in, the seed is changed before it's exposed to the poised soil. So it's simply changed. The seed's better fit for the environment. You know, the amount on the seed, we've got that figured out. The actual numbers of CFUs are less critical than getting it to get it to colonize. So in other words, it looks like you're not going to get there by putting in just that little cup of stuff on there. Whoa, that's not the whole principle. We're putting way more than you need because we're adjusting for losses and losses for some of the treated seed as well.
Yeah. Well, and along that same vein, talking about putting this on the seed, there's a question about possibly using it in a different way. Would this product be effective if you added it to the top of the soil and watered it in, or dissolved it in water and added it to the plants or seeds that way? Is that something that you've ever tried to do, or is that how the product could be used potentially?
There's a huge opportunity, and this will occur we're really not talking about seed inoculation. If in fact, we've had trials done in other places of the world where they drenched just the root zone. That makes a difference. If you're spraying, grapes, for example, it will eventually get to the roots. It's the whole thing is, if you focus on potatoes, if you put it in furrow or put it on the seed piece, you can do in furrow or on the seed piece. So it can be sprayed. You can band spray it, before that's essentially an in-furrow treatment. Band spray before the furrow closes. So some people have that kind of equipment. It can be as long as you don't have it full of fertilizer, because ammonia, high rates of fertility can be an issue. An EC level of over 2,500, it doesn't matter what organism it is. It's pretty hard on the organism, and the fungal organisms may be even more affected than the bacteria. But also the fungal organisms tend to be much more beneficial to the plant. They have their role is amazing. While the bacteria are extremely important early on, they hardly ever perform well over a long period of time. This one addresses nutrient and induced deficiency as well. From too much of this, too much of that is bad sometimes for the plant. It gives you can get weed control, you can get disease control but you also get plant control of the crop you're trying to really do, because there's always a setback related to it. I knew this in about 1972. A couple of years ago.
Yeah, the yin and the yang, right? And so in regards to the phytomicrobiome, what are the most important changes, example, diversity, specific taxon groups, etc.? What are the most apparent changes in the phytomicrobiome associated with the tested crops, say oats?
It's simply the shift in microflora for beneficials at the expense of pathogens and non-beneficials. It simply changes the microbiome. It doesn't, and because it's a bit of a racehorse, once it's inside, it occupies the interstitial space in between the cells, and that's where it becomes a symbiotic relationship with the plant. It gets some of its nutrients from the plant, and it gives up things to the plant. So it's synergy and mutualism is really part of what this thing is doing. And that microflora shift and the acidification and the fact that it's just beyond the growing tip where the bacteria work, and then you go right back where the root hairs are, and that's where bacteria and root hairs, or bacteria and this fungal organism really create a better growing plant. And it's amazing. It's right behind the root tip. So as it moves forward, this product or the organism moves with the roots as they grow. If you're putting a seed treatment on a seed, you have a dead area about an inch around. And seed treatment chemistry is almost all up, not down. So when the roots get outside 1 inch, 1.5 inches, they're unprotected. So band spraying, in the trench works extremely well, especially if you've got seed corns with some varieties of seed treated with some pretty nasty chemistry, which makes it hard for us. You can just band spray it. It will eventually colonize as long as it's 1 inch away. It's happy.
We have lots of questions coming in. I'm going to take a couple more. Our hour's almost up, but I do want to take a couple more questions here. We have someone who's curious about excessive soil mining. So if you have, healthier roots that are, bigger, go deeper, are we not promoting excessive soil mining by crops with such robust root systems? Have you ever encountered any issue regarding excessive soil mining by these plants?
In theory, that's correct, but in generality, I should say in generality, in actual specific cases, what this is doing is acquiring the nutrients that are there. We're mining it, but I don't think we're mining it in a negative fashion. It's just not available. So what good is a nutrient locked up next to a root if it can't be taken in by a plant? It's wasted. And this goes on for a lot of things. We know that if in seedlings, if you put too much fungicide on them, you put them in the ground, there's no microflora on the seed, the piece that you're planting, that little plug plant, or you've wiped out the microflora if you put a fungicide on. So it doesn't survive well in the environment. So you put this on and you get great survivals. This is really important for reforestation seedlings, where you stick them in the ground and forget them, right? When you stick them in the ground, they die. It's just that simple. Put a living microflora on their root system as opposed to killing them. It makes a big difference.
I'm going to take one more question now in regards to cucurbit crops. Have you looked at cucurbit crops at all?
Yes. Greenhouse, hydroponics, yeah. We don't see a great thing. The problem sometimes in getting data there, we know it's going to work. We know it does. Sometimes their tendency to put the EC concentration too high. There's product is being sold, and product like it are being sold. There's several trichodermas and another form of clonostasis. But nobody gets around to telling them that if they get the EC over 25, and they regularly do that at the crop stalls, if there's a lot of dark weather, they'll, the greenhouse growers, for example, will put more fertilizer in the hydroponic lines. That wipes out the microflora. It's short-term growth for long-term problems. So you have to in that case you reapply.
So Bill, I think that leads into maybe our next webinar. Then that'll be like the ENDOGUARD foliar applications would definitely be of benefit for things like melons and cucumbers and those kinds of crops.
I see one question up here in a pea root rock complex. This organism is part of making the plant so much healthier. The other biopesticidal area that there might exist on this is secondary, and that's why we registered as a biostimulant. It's so much more important to get a healthier plant and get it come up and get it to the root system to be able to handle other stuff. And whenever you end up with complex diseases, the same there's a lot of them that end up with, nematodes, all this sort of thing. If the plant is actually in a better state, in a better environment, and the microflora is shifted, there's a lot of microflora out there that actually can control nematodes. Ours not necessarily doesn't, but others can if they're part of a better mix in the better soil microflora.
I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Ron, for your time today. This was fascinating. I'm looking forward to the next webinar. We can tackle things like cucurbits, and there's so much meat on this bone that it's something that, yeah, definitely deserves more attention. And so looking forward to discussing it again, finding out more about it. And thank you so much to our audience for spending your lunch hour with us. Again, this webinar was recorded and will be made available on our website, seedworld.com/Canada, in the coming days. If you would like more information, you can visit adjuvantsplus.com. Bill's contact info and Ron's contact info is on the website, so please feel free to get in touch with them if you would like to find out more. Ron and Bill, thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, thanks, Mark. And I want to thank the whole team from Seed World Group there. You guys have been amazing to work with and just a lot of fun to work with as well. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. I hope you found it interesting. And please stay safe and keep well.
Yes, and I hope our audience, nobody had a blizzard like we had here in Manitoba this morning. Ron and Bill, you're in Windsor, Ontario, so very south. I understand, Bill, you're telling me earlier that the flowers are actually starting to bloom. And so that
daffodils up at least 6 inches, and they're forming, and the blooms are right there. Like, oh my gosh, this is way too early.
That sounds very nice. I hope to our audience that you all can enjoy some blooming flowers today wherever you happen to be. So that's a very nice image. So have a great day, everybody, and take care. This is Mark Zinkowitz signing off.
Take care.